The alarm screamed at 5:45 a.m., a sound that felt less like a wake-up call and more like a daily indictment of her entire life. Maya's hand slapped the snooze button with a practiced, weary precision. For a full 60 seconds, she just lay there in the gray, pre-dawn light, listening to the two different snores harmonizing from either side of the king-sized bed. To her left, her husband, David, a soft, rumbling purr. Curled into her side, their 4-year-old daughter, Lily, a tiny, congested whistle. This was her world, sandwiched between the two people who demanded everything from her, leaving her a hollowed-out shell. She slid out from under Lily, the little girl whimpering in her sleep, her small hand clutching at the empty space where Maya had been. Maya's heart gave a familiar, painful squeeze. Sacrifice. It was the silent anthem of her motherhood. She tucked the blanket back around Lily, kissing her damp forehead. In the ensuite bathroom, she avoided her own eyes in the mirror. She didn't need to look. She knew what was there. A 34-year-old woman who looked a solid 10 years older. Faint lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 2 years ago. Hair that was once her pride and joy, now pulled into a messy, functional bun. She dressed in the same uniform she always wore, cheap, comfortable jeans and a slightly faded t-shirt. Downstairs, the house was a monument to her endless labor. It was always almost clean, almost tidy, but never quite there. A layer of dust on the mantelpiece, a stray Cheerio crushed into the rug by the front door, a stack of unopened mail threatening to avalanche from the counter. David's mail, David's mess. She started the coffee, the machine's gurgle, the first friendly sound of the day. As it brewed, she moved on autopilot, packed Lily's daycare bag, prepped David's lunch, a turkey sandwich, exactly how he liked it, no mayo, extra mustard, and unloaded the dishwasher from the night before. Each task was a brick in the wall of her routine, a wall that felt like it was closing in on her. By the time David lumbered downstairs at 7:15, showered and smelling of expensive cologne, she had Lily at the table, coaxing spoonfuls of yogurt into her. "Morning," he grunted, not looking at either of them as he poured his coffee into a travel mug. "Good morning," Maya said, her voice bright and fake, a performance she put on every single day. "Your lunch is in the fridge. Don't forget you have that parent-teacher conference call for Lily at 3. I emailed you the link. Can't. Big merger meeting. You handle it," he said, scrolling through his phone. "You're better at that stuff anyway." That stuff, the raising of their child, the management of their home, the invisible, unpaid labor that kept their lives from collapsing into chaos. A hot spike of resentment lodged itself in her throat, but she swallowed it down with a sip of bitter coffee. Picking a fight now would only make the morning harder, and Lily would be late to daycare. "Right. Of course," she said, her smile feeling brittle. He finally glanced at Lily. "Bye, kiddo. Be good for mommy." He dropped a perfunctory kiss on Maya's cheek, his mind already miles away at the office, and was out the door. The silence he left behind was heavy. This was the part of the day she both dreaded and craved. The stillness after the storm of getting everyone else out the door. She looked at Lily, who was now painting her face with yogurt. "Okay, my love. Let's get you cleaned up." Her day was a blur of part-time remote work as a freelance graphic designer, a career she'd put on the back burner after Lily was born, and the endless cycle of domestic chores. Laundry, vacuuming, grocery list, figuring out what to make for dinner that David wouldn't complain about. During Lily's nap, she finally sat down at her laptop. She needed to check their joint bank account to pay the electricity bill. As she logged in, her eyes scanned the recent transactions. The usual stuff: grocery store, gas, Amazon. And then she saw it. A charge for $287.50 from The Velvet Box, a high-end lingerie store in the city. Her breath hitched. A weird, cold feeling spread through her chest. Their anniversary was months away. Her birthday had passed with a dutiful bouquet of flowers and a takeout dinner. David buying her lingerie. It was about as likely as him suddenly developing an interest in folding fitted sheets. A naive, hopeful part of her brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe it's a surprise. Maybe he's finally noticed everything. But the hope was a weak, sputtering thing. The evidence of his indifference was all around her, in the crushing weight of her loneliness within her own home. He hadn't touched her in months, not really. Their intimacy had become as transactional as their conversations. A quick, quiet act in the dark, followed by immediate sleep. Her hands trembled as she opened a new tab and Googled the store. It was the kind of place that sold silk and lace confections, not the practical cotton packs she bought from Target. $287.50. That was almost what she made from her last freelance project. A seed of dread, dark and poisonous, was planted in her gut. That evening, David was late, as usual. She'd put Lily to bed and was mechanically wiping down the kitchen counters when he finally walked in. "Long day," he sighed, dropping his briefcase by the door. "The merger is a nightmare, I bet." Maya said, her voice carefully neutral. She watched him hang up his jacket. How was your day? Brutal. Non-stop. He opened the fridge and peered inside. Did you pick up more of that craft beer? The IPA? It's on the list for tomorrow, she said. She took a deep breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. So, I saw a weird charge on the account today. From the velvet box? She watched him closely. For a fraction of a second, his shoulders tensed. It was so quick she almost missed it. Then he turned, his face a mask of casual confusion. The velvet what? Oh, that. Yeah, that's from the client dinner last week. Took the Thompson account there. His wife loves that place, so we popped in so he could pick something out for her. Company card was acting up, so I put it on ours. I need to submit the expense report. He said it all so smoothly, without missing a beat. A month ago, a year ago, she would have believed him. She would have felt silly for even suspecting anything. But the woman she was now, the tired, hollowed-out woman who felt more like a housekeeper than a wife, she saw the lie. She saw the micro-expression of panic in his eyes before the calm facade slid back into place. Right, of course, she said, turning back to the counter and scrubbing at a non-existent stain. Makes sense. He came up behind her, surprising her by putting his hands on her hips. It was the first intimate touch he'd initiated in weeks. You're not jealous, are you? He murmured, his breath warm against her ear. It felt performative, a tactic to throw her off the scent. She forced a laugh. Don't be silly. He kissed her neck, a dry, fleeting touch. Good, I'm beat. Heading up to bed. She stood in the silent, spotless kitchen long after he'd gone upstairs. The house, which usually felt so suffocating, now felt vast and empty. The seed of dread had sprouted, its thorny vines twisting around her heart. She looked at her reflection in the dark window over the sink. She didn't see a tired mom or a neglected wife anymore. She saw the ghost of the woman she used to be. And that ghost was pissed. The performance was over. The facade had cracked, and through the fissures, a cold, clear light was beginning to shine. This wasn't just about loneliness anymore. This was about betrayal. And Maya knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that her life of quiet sacrifice was about to come to a very loud, very messy end. The next week passed in a strange, suspended animation. Maya moved through her days with the same robotic efficiency, but inside, a storm was raging. She became a detective in her own life, a spy in her own home. Every interaction with David was now loaded with subtext. She watched him, listened to him, with a new, chilling clarity. She noticed how his phone was always face down on the counter, how he'd started taking it with him to the bathroom, how he'd suddenly developed a habit of working late on Thursday nights, always with a perfectly reasonable excuse. A system migration, a client in a different time zone. The lies were like tiny threads, and she was gently, patiently, pulling on them, watching the whole tapestry of their marriage begin to unravel. Her love for him, what was left of it, curdled into a cold, hard ball of contempt. But it was layered with a devastating grief. She was mourning the man she'd thought he was, the future she'd believed they were building together. She'd given up so much for this, for him. She'd put her career on hold, she'd let her friendships fade, she'd molded herself into the wife and mother she thought he wanted. And for what? So he could buy some 20-something, in accounting a $300 lace teddy? On Thursday, the day of his supposed late night, she put her plan into action. She called in a favor from her older sister Chloe, the one person who had never liked David. Can you take Lily for a sleepover? It's an emergency, Maya said, her voice trembling with a truth she couldn't yet explain. Of course. Is everything okay? Chloe asked, her tone instantly concerned. No, Maya whispered, the admission cracking her open. But it will be. Just, please. After she dropped a thrilled Lily off at Chloe's house, a weight lifted, followed immediately by a heavier one of grim determination. She drove home to the empty, silent house. It felt different tonight. It wasn't a prison. It was a command center. She went straight to David's home office. It was his sacred space, a place she rarely entered, always respecting his need for focus. Now, the very idea made her snort with derision. She sat in his expensive, ergonomic chair, the leather cool beneath her. She tried the drawers of his desk, locked. Of course, a lesser woman might have given up. But a woman who had spent years figuring out how to open child-proof caps and untangle necklace chains was a force to be reckoned with. She went to the kitchen junk drawer, a graveyard of random keys, and brought the whole pile back to the office. On the fifth try, a small, tarnished silver key turned in the lock. The drawer slid open. Her heart was a drum solo in her ears. Inside were the usual things. Spare charging cables, a stack of business cards, a half-empty pack of gum. And then, tucked beneath a leather-bound portfolio, she found it. A phone, an old iPhone, one she recognized as his previous model. He'd told her he'd traded it in. Her hands were ice cold as she pressed the home button. A password screen glowed back at her. She tried his usual codes. His birthday. Lily's birthday. Nothing. She thought for a moment, her mind racing through the detritus of their life together. And then it hit her. The date of his promotion, the one that had started this whole cycle of neglect and arrogance. The day he'd truly started to believe his own hype. She typed in the numbers. The phone unlocked. For a moment, she just stared at the home screen. A generic photo of a mountain range. This was the point of no return. Whatever she found here would shatter whatever was left of her old life. She took a deep, shuddering breath and opened the Messages app. And there she was. Brittany. Her name was at the top of the list, with a heart emoji next to it. Maya's vision blurred as she scrolled. The messages were a nauseating mix of the banal and the intensely intimate. They complained about their coworkers. He sent her flirty selfies from his car. She sent him photos that made Maya's stomach lurch, her face hot, with a mixture of shame and fury. They talked about their future, a fresh start. He called her my escape. But the message that truly broke her, that carved out her insides and left her hollow, was from 2 weeks ago. Brittany, I can't wait until we don't have to hide. This is killing me. David, I know, baby. Soon. This merger is almost done. The bonus is huge. Then I can finally leave. It's not easy with the kid and everything. Maya's so fragile. She'd fall apart. I have to do this right. Fragile. He thought she was fragile. The woman who had pushed a 7-pound human out of her body without an epidural, because the anesthesiologist was late. The woman who managed their entire lives while he played corporate big shot. The woman who was currently sitting in his office, uncovering his affair with the steady hands of a bomb disposal expert. A strange, cold calm settled over her. The grief and the pain were still there, howling in the background, but this new feeling was louder. It was rage, a pure, incandescent rage that burned away the last of her illusions. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a dismissal. He saw her as an obstacle, a fragile piece of furniture he had to carefully navigate around on his way out the door. She took photos of everything, dozens of screenshots, capturing every vile, patronizing word. She documented the lingerie purchase confirmation email she found in the phone's inbox. She was methodical, thorough. This wasn't for a divorce lawyer. Not yet. This was for her. She heard the garage door open. He was home. Her movements became swift and silent. She closed the drawer, locked it, returned the key to the junk drawer, and was sitting on the couch with a book in her lap when he walked in. Hey, you're still up, he said, looking surprised. He seemed lighter, happier. The guilt, apparently, wasn't weighing him down too much. Couldn't sleep, she said, her voice even. She looked at him, really looked at him. This stranger she'd built a life with. He was already packing his bags for his escape, and he hadn't even had the decency to tell her. Well, I'm wiped. That system migration was a beast, he said, heading for the stairs. The same lie, delivered with the same easy nonchalance. David, she said, stopping him in his tracks. He turned. Yeah? She gave him a small, tired smile. The smile of the fragile woman he thought she was. I love you. The lie tasted like ash in her mouth, but it was a necessary one. He needed to believe everything was normal. He needed to feel safe and secure in his deception. He softened, a flicker of the man she'd married crossing his face. Love you too, May. Get some sleep. As he trudged upstairs, Maya stayed on the couch, the phone burning a hole in her mind. The revenge fantasies started to bloom, dark and beautiful and terrifying. She wouldn't just leave him. She wouldn't just take half and call it a day. That was what he expected the fragile version of her to do. He had no idea who he was dealing with. He had taken her sacrifices and thrown them in her face. Now it was her turn to take everything from him. His money, his reputation, his perfect, carefully constructed life. The game was on, and Maya was done playing the victim. The next phase of Maya's new, secret life required funding. David monitored their joint accounts with a lazy, occasional scrutiny, but he'd notice a few $100s gone missing. She needed her own money, and she needed a weapon. The weapon came in the form of a USB drive she bought with cash from a Staples 2 towns over. The money was harder. Her freelance income was direct deposited into the joint account, a decision she'd made out of a sense of marital unity that now seemed laughably naive. She had to get creative. She started a ruthless audit of her own life, looking for every spare dollar. She returned the new pair of sneakers she'd bought but barely worn. She started using extreme coupons, not to save the family money, but to pocket the cash difference from the grocery budget David gave her. She sold old clothes and Lily's outgrown toys on Facebook Marketplace, telling David they were just doing a big clear-out. It was slow, painstaking work, building a war chest $5 and $10 at a time. It felt demeaning, but each crumpled bill she hid in a sealed envelope at the back of her freezer was a tiny act of rebellion. With $500 saved, she drove to a rundown strip mall and walked into a place called Tech Wizards. A bell jingled overhead. The guy behind the counter couldn't have been older than 20, with gauges in his ears and a sleeve of intricate tattoos. "Help you?" he asked, not looking up from his computer game. Maya's heart was pounding. This felt seedy, dangerous. I need something installed on a phone. Remotely. Without the user knowing. He finally looked at her, his eyes sharp and assessing. He saw a tired-looking mom in mom jeans, not his usual clientele. "What kind of something?" "Something that lets me see everything. Texts, calls, location." He whistled softly. "That's some serious stuff. For a cheating husband?" She didn't flinch. She just held his gaze. "That's my business. Can you do it or not?" He named a price that was almost her entire savings. She didn't hesitate. She pulled the cash from her purse and laid it on the counter. "I need it on this number," she said, sliding a piece of paper with David's number across the formica. He took the money. "It's not instant. I need to send him a phishing link. He clicks it, it installs itself. It'll look like a system update prompt. You gotta make sure he clicks it." "I'll make sure," Maya said, her voice steely. That night, she accidentally spilled a glass of water on David's phone. He was furious, sputtering about how he couldn't be without it. "I'm so sorry, honey," she said, layering on the fragility. "Here, use my laptop to check your email. And I saw there's a system update for your OS. You should probably run that too while you're at it." Grumbling, he took the laptop. A few minutes later, he clicked the link the tech guy had sent, muttering about annoying security patches. Just like that, the ghost was in his machine. The next morning, a plain text file started populating on the encrypted USB drive she kept hidden in her car. It was a live feed of his digital life. Every text to Brittany, every email, every Google search, his exact location, pinpointed on a map. It was a fire hose of information, and it was both devastating and empowering. She learned that Brittany was 26, an event planner at his firm. She learned they were planning a weekend away next month, a test run for their new life. She learned that David was indeed waiting for his merger bonus, a staggering $150,000, which was due to hit his account in 3 weeks. A separate hidden account he'd set up, of course. The sheer audacity of his planning, the cold, financial precision of his exit strategy solidified her resolve. He wasn't just leaving her, he was robbing her. He was planning to take the fruit of their labor, the labor that had required her sacrifices, and fund his new life with his mistress. Her revenge needed an upgrade. It wasn't enough to expose him. She had to beat him at his own game. She had to take his money and his future before he even knew they were gone. She started studying him through the data. She learned his passwords, his security questions, the pattern of his thoughts. She learned he was deeply insecure about a younger, more aggressive VP named Mark, who was gunning for his job. She learned he'd cut a few corners on a recent project, fudging some numbers to make his team's performance look better. Maya smiled for the first time in weeks. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just found its prey's weakness. She began to craft her masterpiece. Using the information from his phone, she created a fake email address, perfectly mimicking Mark's. She spent days studying their email exchanges, learning Mark's terse, arrogant tone. Then, she sent an email from Mark to David's boss, Mr. Henderson. It was a masterpiece of corporate sabotage, full of implied concerns and veiled accusations. It mentioned the fudged numbers, suggested David was stretched too thin with his complicated personal life, and hinted that he was leaking information to a competitor. She sent it late on a Friday night, knowing Henderson was a workaholic who checked his email on weekends. The following Monday, the atmosphere through David's phone was electric with panic. He was called into Henderson's office for a closed-door meeting. His texts to Brittany were frantic. "David, something's wrong. Henderson is on the warpath. Something about the Q3 reports. Brittany, you'll be fine, baby. You're a star over there. David, I don't know. This feels different." Maya read them while sitting in the parent pickup line at Lily's preschool. She didn't feel joy. She felt a profound, chilling sense of power. She was no longer just reacting to his betrayal. She was orchestrating his downfall from the shadows, using his own arrogance and deceit as her tools. The foundation of his perfect life was cracking, and he didn't have a clue that the earthquake was being triggered from inside his own house by the fragile wife he thought he'd left behind. The noose was tightening, but David, in his arrogance, was still looking in the wrong direction. He blamed Mark. He blamed the, quote, toxic corporate culture. He came home tense and snappish, taking his work stress out on Maya, who played her part to perfection, the concerned, slightly clueless wife, offering him a beer and a back rub. It's just so unfair, he'd rant, while her hands worked the knots from his shoulders, her mind cold and clear. You have no idea what unfair is. Her focus now was the money. The $150,000 bonus, the key to her and Lily's future. She knew the exact date it was due to be deposited into his secret account. She had his login credentials, but a transfer of that size would trigger security alerts. He'd see it instantly. She needed a bigger play, a final, definitive move that would leave him with nothing. The plan came to her during another sleepless night. It was ruthless. It was risky. It would require the ultimate sacrifice of the last shred of her old self, the part that still believed in fairness and decency. But he had forfeited all rights to her decency the moment he called her fragile to his mistress. She spent days preparing. She rented a small, furnished apartment in a nearby city under her sister Chloe's name, paying 3 months' rent in cash. She slowly, over a week, moved suitcases of their most important belongings, Lily's favorite toys, her own portfolio, photo albums, their passports, into the apartment's sparse closet. It felt like digging a tunnel to freedom, one handful of dirt at a time. The day before the bonus was due to hit, she put the final part of her plan into motion. She used David's phone data to find Brittany's personal email. Then, from a new, anonymous account, she sent her a message. Subject: You should know. Brittany, I know about you and David. I know about the weekend trip to the Willow Creek Inn. I know he's promised you a future. You seem like a nice girl, so I thought you should know the truth. He's done this before. The last one was a girl named Sarah at his previous firm. He left her high and dry when he got bored. He's not leaving his wife. He's told me repeatedly he's only staying for the money, and because he pities her. He's playing you. Check his hidden email account, david.mitchell.shadow@gmail.com. The password is the name of his first dog, Buster, a concerned party. It was a gamble, but Maya was counting on Brittany's youth, her ego, her inevitable insecurity. She was pouring gasoline on their relationship and handing her a match. The reaction was faster and more spectacular than she could have hoped for. The text messages between David and Brittany that evening were a 5-alarm fire. Brittany, you lying piece of shit. david.mitchell.shadow@gmail.com. Sarah, you told me I was the only one. David, what are you talking about? Brittany, that's not my email. Who told you that? Brittany, so you're just staying with that sad sack of a wife because you pity her. Is that what I am? Your side piece until something better comes along? David, baby, no. I love you. I'm leaving her, I swear. As soon as the bonus hits tomorrow, we can go. Maya read them all, her heart a stone in her chest. The bonus hits tomorrow. Confirmation. The next day was D-Day. She woke up early, her body humming with a strange, calm energy. She got Lily ready for daycare, her hands steady as she braided her daughter's hair. She packed a special lunch for her. She kissed her goodbye at the daycare door, holding her a little too tight, breathing in her little girl's smell. This is for you, my love. All of it. She drove home and went straight to David's office. She logged into his work computer. She knew the password. He used the same one for everything. She opened his remote desktop connection to the company server. Then, she opened a blank email. To Mr. Henderson, HR Director CC, the entire C-suite, including his rival Mark. Subject: Formal resignation and confession. She began to type. She wrote in his voice, the arrogant, self-justifying tone she knew so well from his texts. Dear Mr. Henderson and team, effective immediately, I am resigning from my position. I can no longer be a part of a culture that rewards backstabbing and mediocrity. The truth is, I have been unhappy for some time. My personal life has been a mess, and I have not been performing at my best. The numbers on the Q3 report were, as some have suspected, manipulated by me to make my team look better. Furthermore, I have been having an affair with a junior employee, Brittany Simmons, and have been planning to leave my wife and child to be with her. The stress of this double life has compromised my judgment. I am leaving to focus on my mental health and my new relationship. I apologize for any inconvenience. She attached screenshots of his texts to Brittany planning their getaway. Screenshots of the fudged data from his personal cloud drive. She didn't send it. Not yet. She saved it as a draft. The trigger was pulled. The bullet was in the chamber. Then, she turned to his personal bank account. The bonus had hit, $150,000. It was just sitting there. She couldn't transfer it to herself, but she could make it disappear. She logged into his brokerage account, another secret she'd uncovered. With a few clicks, she used the entire $150,000 to purchase a highly volatile, obscure cryptocurrency that was known for its wild swings and high transaction fees. It was the financial equivalent of setting a pile of money on fire. The transaction would be irreversible, the fees would eat a huge chunk, and the value could plummet to zero in hours. She clicked, confirm. The money was gone, vaporized into the digital ether. Her hands were shaking now. Adrenaline coursed through her. She hit send on the resignation email. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, David's phone, which was charging on his desk, exploded. It started ringing, buzzing, pinging with emails and texts. It was Henderson. It was HR. It was Mark. It was Brittany. A string of furious, screaming voicemails. Maya stood up. She walked out of his office, down the stairs, and into the kitchen. She poured herself a glass of water and drank it slowly, watching the phone on the counter dance, and shriek like a dying animal. This was the sacrifice. She had sacrificed her own morality. She had become a monster to slay a bigger one. She had burned his kingdom to the ground, and in the process, she knew she had scorched a part of her own soul. But as the phone finally fell silent, a different kind of quiet filled the house. It wasn't the quiet of loneliness or despair. It was the quiet of a battlefield, after the war has been won. She was no longer the ghost in the machine. She was the architect of its destruction. The garage door opener groaned to life exactly at 6:05 p.m. Maya was waiting. She sat at the kitchen table, a single suitcase by her feet. She had changed out of her mom uniform, and into a simple, well-fitting dress she hadn't worn in years. She'd even put on a little makeup. She needed to look like the victor, not the victim. David didn't just walk in. He stumbled in. His face was a ghastly shade of gray, his tie was loose, and his eyes were wide with a kind of animal panic she had never seen before. He stared at her, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. He looked from her face to the suitcase and back again, the pieces slowly, horrifyingly, clicking into place. You, he finally choked out, his voice ragged. It was you. Maya said nothing. She just looked at him, her expression calm, her eyes clear. The email. My God, Maya, the email. Henderson fired me on the spot. Security escorted me out. My career is over. And the money, the bonus, it's gone. What did you do? He was screaming now, spittle flying from his lips. He took a step toward her, his hands clenched into fists. Maya didn't flinch. She simply picked up her phone from the table, her thumb hovering over the screen. The police are on speed dial, David. Take one more step and I'll give them a show. I'll tell them how my unstable, recently fired, cheating husband came home and threatened me. I have the text to Brittany to back it up. He froze, his body trembling with impotent rage. Why? Why would you destroy me? That was the question that finally broke her silence. A harsh, mirthless laugh escaped her. Destroy you? You were already packing, David. You were already gone. You were going to take the money I helped you earn by holding down this entire fucking world for you, and you were going to run off with your girlfriend. You called me fragile. You told her you pitied me. Her voice was low and venomous. I didn't destroy you. I just beat you to the exit. The truth of it slammed into him. He sagged against the doorframe, all the fight draining out of him, replaced by a dawning, terrifying comprehension. The mouse he'd ignored had not only bitten him, it had set a trap that had snapped his neck. Where's Lily? He whispered. She's safe. She's with my sister. She's where she'll always be safe from now on. Maya stood up, picking up her suitcase. My lawyer will be in touch. I've already filed for divorce, on the grounds of adultery and financial deception. I have all the evidence. Every text, every email. The record of you blowing our daughter's college fund on crypto. Our daughters. He looked like he was going to be sick. The house is in both our names, so I can't kick you out. But I'm leaving. You can have this empty shell. It's all you ever really wanted anyway. She walked towards the front door, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. A sound she hadn't made in this house in years. Maya, wait, he pleaded, his voice cracking. We can fix this. I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake. She stopped at the door and turned to look at him one last time. The man who had been her husband, her partner, was now just a broken stranger in a too-big house. I know you're sorry, she said, her voice quiet but firm. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you lost your money and your job. But you are not sorry for what you did to me. To us. And that's the one thing you can never fix. She opened the door and walked out into the evening air. It was cool and clean. She didn't look back. She got into her car, the one she'd paid off with her freelance work, and drove away. She didn't drive to the new apartment immediately. She drove to Chloe's house. When she walked in, Lily came running. Mommy, You're wearing a pretty dress." Maya swept her daughter up into her arms, holding her tight, breathing in the sweet, real scent of her. This was what it was all for. This future. "Yes, baby," she whispered into Lily's hair, her voice thick with tears that were finally, tears of relief. Mommy's starting a new chapter. Weeks later, the divorce proceedings were underway. David, jobless and facing a mountain of legal fees, had no leverage. He signed the papers quickly, giving her full custody and a sizable chunk of what was left of their assets, just to make her go away. Maya was sitting in her new, sun-filled apartment, working on a design project for a new client. She was her own boss now. The work was fulfilling. Lily was thriving in a new preschool. One afternoon, a notification popped up on her screen. A news alert from a local business journal. Disgraced former VP David Mitchell faces SEC investigation for fraudulent data. Maya read the headline. Then, she calmly closed the tab. There was no satisfaction. No triumphant thrill. There was only the quiet knowledge that the chapter was closed. The house she had left behind was empty now, in more ways than one. David was a ghost in it, haunted by the echoes of the life he'd thrown away. But Maya was no longer an echo. She was a voice, strong and clear, finally telling her own story. A story that began with sacrifice, was forged in revenge, and was now, finally, about building a future on her own terms.